Former homeless people, what did you need the most? What was the best thing someone did for you? I needed a meal. A friend from high school saw me licking the peanut butter off a snack cracker to savor it, and she gave me her lunch. I will always remember that tasty salad. Thank you, Jade, if you're out there. So the reality of being homeless is a couple of variations. You live in a shelter. Shelters are unlike jails. You have in and out times. Everything is running on their schedule. Lots of rules and very few freedoms, but more than an actual jail. It's an insane asylum, a hustler's market, an old folks home, and finally a place for the few to get back on their feet. Yes, you can get fed and find a way out, but the stress for someone not used to this is insane high. Trying to scam you at every moment. Unsanitary, ultra cold sleeping environment with no warm bedding. Aggressive staff. All the while you are on edge not to piss someone off because you don't want to lose your bed. And the list goes on. Option 2. Buy a sleeping bag and live outside. Bugs and weather. And how do you spend your off time? Number 3. Friends. Not many people have tolerance to help others. Actually, they don't have ability to help others. Not even family. We are too self-involved as a society. The reason homeless people exist is for a few reasons. Nobody cares. People take advantage of others' good nature, and it's expensive to be homeless. Option 4 is to buy a hotel every night. Buy food at a gas station. $5 for a sandwich. Think about everything you do every day. That all has a cost, and when you can't get a footing, it's like living in quicksand. Yes, free food exists. Services exist, but it's a nightmare to access most times. Spend 3 hours in line for food stamps for them to tell you that you don't have the proper paperwork. Oh no, birth certificate. Sorry, can't help you. Want a birth certificate? That will be $65 in 3 weeks. The bureaucracy involved is insane. As someone who lives in a shelter, so technically homeless, but never without a physical roof over our heads, kindness and socks, anything not covered by food stamps is always the greatest need, in my experience. Food is offered in abundance and seldom scarce if you know where to look. We often needed hygiene supplies, soap, shampoo, detergent, toilet paper, wet wipes, and socks. Never enough socks. The best thing? Treat me as though I'm a fellow human being. Offer direct help. Tell me what you're willing to do. Since asking is hard, you're a good person for asking. Because of people like you, I am on the path to success and gainfully employed. I live in a small county that has a pretty bad homeless problem. I'd say a large percentage are addicted to HRM and or mentally ill. The idiots in the local govt just had the opportunity from the state for over $1 million in funding for mental health and addiction assistance, but passed on it because they said they don't have enough people to do the work. Homelessness is not the problem that needs to be fixed. It's a symptom of a bigger problem no one seems to want to deal with. On a one-on-one level, many good posts here, but ultimately, much of this can be solved with the government actually giving a crap and voters who are not afraid to pay for it. I was what's called working homeless. I had a life, a job and stuff, but I had no place to live and no ability to get my own home or apartment even. I slept in my car for a few days. Talking to me like I was a normal person went a long way. I was destitute or obviously homeless, but knowing I had nowhere to go after work besides my car to drive to a Walmart or industrial parking lot, so no friends or co-workers saw me living out of my car, was the most depressing situation I've been through. It's shameful. That and giving me a chance on a place to stay. I wasn't homeless for long thankfully, but I had a co-worker who let me rent a room and I was able to get my life going again. I was living out of my car and couch surfing for about 2 years. I missed people I could trust, so I would offer to get food, cook for them, do the dishes and leave them leftovers in exchange for a safe place to park, a couch to crash on, possibly a shower, and a meal with people, or hard labor depending on the person. What I needed most was safe places to park, potable running water, and I missed having access to refrigeration, as any perishable food I had to eat ASAP or toss if I got too full and wonder where I was going to eat next to avoid getting food poisoning. I was lucky I had a job, though it wasn't enough to make rent, anywhere to store my stuff with how much I moved for work every month to 2 weeks in the summer, but I was able to save up that way. I was also quite lucky I could afford a $10 a month gym membership that I just left the last address I had attached to my account so I could keep accessing it when I was in an area where I didn't know anyone and wasn't comfortable couch surfing. The best thing someone did for me was when I found myself 1,000 miles north from home with a boyfriend that said if I moved up with him, I'd never have to worry about being homeless again, but didn't tell me he lived in school housing and hadn't checked with his 5 roommates if it was okay for me to be taken in, so I was back to my car for my first Oregonian winter. A coworker of mine found out and let me crash on his couch for a whole month till I got approved for an apartment. The first night he took me in, the whole passenger side of my car froze over with 2 inches of ice from the freezing sleet that week. If it weren't for him, I think I probably would have frozen to death in my car. I was very unprepared for the weather up there. One night I woke up from a dream he was trying to chase me into some unfamiliar mountain terrain, and I woke up to him staring at me from the foot of the couch at 4 AM. Then he turned and put the TV on. I couldn't really sleep there again while he was home, but I also didn't want to freeze to death. Not the most terrible thing that happened during that time in my life, but creepy AF. Obligatory. I've never been homeless, but I would like to put a story here. When I lived in LA, a homeless man stopped us and was freaking out. Someone earlier had said they would buy him any food item he wanted and he said cheese. Thinking he was being pragmatic, he stood there holding a block of cheese with a $70 price tag on it, looking bewildered. He wasn't sure if this was normal price for cheese now. He kind of felt guilty he made the guy spend that much. Kind of was angry that he wasted that amount when he could have made better use of it. Mostly confused. So whatever you do to try and help homeless people, I suggest not doing that. Socks. Having clean socks is rare and can prevent jungle rot, a form of gangrene. Food is surprisingly easy to get actually, but clean water is sometimes a little harder. So carry water bottles in summer and pass them out if you can. Finally, a job. Most companies require you to have a permanent address, which means you can't get a job unless you have a place to live, and you can't get a place to live unless you have a job. It's dumb. At my job you get 1 free meal at the time of your break. I was going and giving my meal to a homeless man who used to always be by my work. One day I was told it was considered stealing and if I did it again I would be fired. I got all of my co-workers' approval and at my break took the money out of the tip jar and gave it to the man. He came in from the snow and had a warm meal and a nice place to sit. Doing something as little as helping someone get out of the snow for a few hours and giving them something to eat means everything. I've never been homeless myself, but I know that if I was, I would want someone to help me. Also, just having a conversation with someone helps. This same homeless man was crying because his wife had died the night prior when I first approached him. So I think just being a shoulder to cry on for someone is great, and it doesn't require you to give them money or anything. My co-worker let me live with him rent-free for a year until I could save money to move out of state where it was more affordable. Another stranger also fostered my dog for that year so she wouldn't end up in the shelter and so I wouldn't have to lose her. These 2 individuals changed my life for the better and I could never repay them enough. I worked full-time, had no vices, I just ended up in a crappy situation and I needed someone to help me. I think without these 2 I would for sure have committed suicide. My life was just so crap. I was out of resources and my dog was my best friend. I now have a really good job and can afford a nice home for me and my pup. We can eat well and afford luxuries. Life is better. Money for HR. Direct giving of drugs. Second, a hot shower. Third, food. But then I got clean and a chance was all I needed. Someone to let me have a chance to earn my way. Taking a chance on people with criminal records. I had fricked up so many times for years. I had an ankle monitor, it was the middle of summer, hot as frick, so I am in shorts, everyone can see I have on an ankle monitor and am therefore a criminal. I told him, my boss, the whole story. I have over 20 felonies, all non-violent, drug related. He still hired me, taught me a trade, and that really let me get my crap together. Been working for him going on 7 years and been clean and out of trouble ever since. Just because someone has a long career of freaking up doesn't mean that they won't reach a point for change, but someone has to let them have the opportunity, which is a risk and you could get burned. I fricked over more than I can count people who tried to help me, but thankfully I kept meeting people who let me try again and gave me a shot, and that literally is what saved my life. Taking that chance can let someone become a real person again. Before it had been over a decade of shooting dope. Another 6 or 7 years just doing drugs, freaking up, but H was what did me in. Not homeless the entire time, by the end I was just waiting for it or someone to kill me. Fortunately I got locked up instead and finally got tired of chasing it. Not just thinking in my head I don't want to do this anymore like you think about losing weight or eating better. It was at the point of there ain't no other option. I make this shot at getting clean work or I give it up, and this is it. I don't mean to sound over dramatic, but I don't know how else to convey the mindset and the change of mindset from chasing what you wanted to not wanting to chase it but not being able to stop, and it destroying everything but you couldn't do anything about it. Sometimes just giving someone a few bucks to get high so they aren't sick and can make it another day so they can reach that point is the best you can do when addiction is the problem at hand. Sorry this was so long and I'm on a phone and formatting sucks, but I've lived this and been through it, and I am big on mental health, addiction and prison reform. Homeless as a 15-year-old girl for 6 months in 2009. The train station security guard would let me stay in the waiting room overnight. It had a toilet, but most importantly for me was that it was safe as the main station doors were locked. Other than that, toiletries, toothpaste and toothbrush, deodorant, baby wipes, hairbrush from a local charity, a hot drink when it was cold or a bottle of water when hot, socks, gloves, a book. I lived on the streets when I was 15. The best thing someone did was give me $200. They were a teacher who I had multiple classes with the year before and we just ran into each other. The thing I needed was someplace safe to go. I had issues at home. That's why I ran away. Duh. But police kept trying to send me back to that. I was even capable and smart enough that I set up a way to start college early, at 16. But social services then intervened and took me out of the place I finally had gotten, along with some college roommates, and forced me to live with another relative, one who just happened to be a tweaker. That relative thought they could get money by taking me in, and after 6 months of not getting anything, kicked me out. Honestly, social services fricked my teen years up. Instead of getting a bachelor's degree by 20, I wasn't even allowed to get my GED until I was 17 because of their insanity. I ended up homeless multiple times because they kept sending me to bad homes, because they didn't believe a 16-year-old could support themselves. If they had just let me do things the way I had started, I would have had a head start on independence and a decent life. Instead, they sent me into homes with greedy abusers and drug addicts. Social services should listen to the kid, and if they are in a good place, even if it's a 15-16-year-old working full-time and living with older people in a rental, they should leave them alone. They didn't listen to me at all. Neither did the police. They basically just kept hitting the reset button on my life, forcing me to redo stuff that should have been done already, while putting me into the hands of adults they did believe, who are all awful people. Tampons, pads. If I would have known the cup existed, I would have really appreciated it. Best thing was when I was basically abandoned and told to find a police officer to take you to a homeless shelter. I went into the store I was left at to see if I could get a hold of my parents. I was completely across country from them. After the lady at the deli heard my conversation, which ended with my mother saying you can't come home, I of course broke down crying, and she hugged me and said I can't do much but I've been where you are, so take this, and handed me $20. Another worker came up after that and offered to take me to her house for the night, feed me, let me shower, and get me to the women's homeless shelter in Seattle the next day. These two ladies really helped me out in the worst moment of my life. I really appreciate all they did, and I really wish I could thank them now. I was living in my car for 2 weeks after getting kicked out over a stupid fight with my parents. My sister called her ex-boyfriend, who she knew had space out on his acreage for me to stay. Stayed there pretty much rent-free and chipped in what I could. To this day still one of the nicest things anyone's ever done for me. When homeless people ask me for money, I usually say no, but I'll buy you food as an easy get out of jail free card. Usually they say no and some even cuss you out. One man took me up on it and actually ended up having a $20 steak with him from Ricky's haha. Living in a van for half a year during the recession, looking for work, when said van runs out of gas on interstate, pulled to the shoulder hazards on, walked 5 or so miles to fill what I could in a gas can using car change, came back, van was gone, towed and impounded, later found out it was late by the time I walked back to town, tried to nap in a Walmart. Random guy sees me and learns my predicament from an employee I told, gives me a ride to a hotel and pays for the night. Refused anyway for me to get a hold of him and pay him back when I could. Extremely grateful to this day. I had 2 cats that I wasn't able to take to a shelter. My friend took them in for an undetermined amount of time, and free of any charge. He also for their food, litter, and even toys. Months later when I had to leave the shelter he took me in as well. A manager for a Wendy's bought my children and I a meal. I cried for hours. It was so kind of him. It made them feel normal for a moment and that meant the world to me. When I was back on my feet I sent him a thank you card, but honestly nothing could have repaid that act of kindness. I work volunteer for a homeless shelter. I deal with them on a weekly basis. My boss taught me, if you ever meet a homeless person, treat them with kindness and offer to go take them for a coffee and a meal if you can afford it. I work with people who are entrenched in addictions. Once a month, we hitch up and take these people for food and drinks. They spend their days not talking to anyone, being spat at, being shouted at, being moved on. For some it's nice to be treated as human, as an equal. Please treat everyone with a kind word, with empathy. It can make someone's year. Trust me. I was homeless for the better part of a year, like sleeping on park benches homeless. The best thing people did for me was not assume I was a junkie. I was not doing drugs or drinking. I was suffering from mental illness. Some people gave me money and I said I was getting food and they seemed to believe me. The nicest guy was this manager of a pizza place that sold by the slice. It'd go in at closing and he'd give me the leftovers. The worst was people who assaulted homeless people because they could. I got my nose broke by a guy who harassed me and another guy put a gun to my head for laughs as I slept. I have PTSD but it gets better with time and therapy. I've been living in a house for a few years now. I'm not a homeless person, but I have heard a lot of their stories since I usually sit down and have a talk with them before either buying or giving them some food and water or something that no one thinks of, such as a haircut. As I said, I usually talk to them. We humans are social animals and need to talk to each other and gossip, etc. Homeless people usually don't get to do that as much for obvious reasons. Everyone has a story, and 70% of the time it's an accident, not drugs or gambling or similar. I usually start by asking what their name is and if I can sit down and have a talk with them. Usually I start by talking about literally anything before asking if they mind sharing their story with me. I always use their name, since they never get to hear it now that they don't have co-workers and maybe not that many friends. Sometimes I can just see their eyes light up when they hear their name for the first time in God knows how long. I think that this is the best you can do for them. The most important thing for a human isn't money, it's being social. Well, obviously money and my job. LOL, I'm so happy I had a job when I found myself homeless. I ended up renting a storage unit and living in there for a while. Basically, when I first realized I'm going to be homeless, I plan out everything I'm gonna need to take care of. First, somewhere for me to stay out of the elements, so storage unit. Then it was hygiene, so the storage unit was right next to a gas station. I would get up early for work, go into the restroom and shave, brush my teeth, wipe my face and stuff real fast. And then I got a gym membership, so I had a place to shower and the place had some laundry, so I was able to throw in a small load workout, shower and leave. There was also a laundry mat not too far from my storage unit, maybe a mile or 1.5 miles. Other than that, I had to invest in a watch so I know what time it was when I'm in my unit. Eventually I got a small portable charger to help charge my phone while I was sleeping. Also, I charged that and my phone at work, and sometimes I would go to the restaurant across the street and ask them to charge my phone and I'll read a book while I'll drink at the bar. I got those little sticky lights to put up on the side of my unit, and I made sure the storage unit was just big enough for me to lay down a twin size mattress. The worst part was I had to have a pee jug cause the restroom was in the main office and I'm not sure if they had a security, but they had cameras in the building, so I wanted to make sure I stay as hidden as possible. Also, I had to have a knife with me. There was definitely other people in there. I could hear muffled talking or a cough once in a while, and since I'm in the unit I couldn't really lock myself in. And for the person who helped me the most is my sister. At this point I haven't talked to her in years, just no communication. And she calls me out of the blue and we are chatting and she asked if I wanted to stay with her. At this time I told her I gotten a divorce and living on my own trying to pay bills. I said yes and my life took off since then. I'm doing great now. I got a wife that loves me and a cat that is crazy. I have 2 cars LOL, and we are looking to get our own home instead of apartments in the next year or 2. Oh, and we have plans to start our own business within a few years so. But that's my story, or the basic of it. There's so much craziness I can go about, but this comment is long enough. I was only homeless for a couple weeks, but what I ended up wishing I had the most was a big water bottle. It was in March, so it was too cold for the public water fountains to be on. And after like 10 in a place I could get water was closed. It sucked going for 8-10 hours overnight without a single drink of water. I was only technically homeless as my family could no longer afford to pay for utilities on our house. We did switch between sleeping in our church and at our uncle's house, but things were tough. I think the only thing we needed the most was reliable transportation to school, as it was getting more and more tough to make it every day. One of the best things anyone ever did for me didn't necessarily relate to my homelessness, but at school. A teacher had recognized me as a good student and soon enough the whole class rang in listing things they liked about me, and it simply made me forget the problems at home. My family was also dealing with my father being unfaithful to my mother, and that led to a divorce between them. The compliments and everything that they said just made all of those troubles melt away. I was no longer thinking about where we would sleep next or what we would have to eat for dinner tonight, and I was happy 4 weeks afterward. I wish I could go back and tell them thank you and what I think about them before I had moved away. I am currently out of treatment and I am seeking sober living. I have nowhere to go and I don't want to use any recommendations. I'm in the Los Angeles area. I am female, just ready to start living her life. I have very limited money. I need help. What can someone do to help the homeless? Besides the typical food and money drives, I thought of collecting some stuff like feminine products, toothpaste and toothbrush, hand sanitizer, putting it in a bag, and if I see someone in need, give it to them should they need JT. Would that be okay or frowned upon? Or is there something else better I can do? Something to do. Interaction from someone. A lot of homeless people get a lot of crap for using drugs, but sometimes they can't help it. Many people have never experienced what it is like to not have any responsibilities and the immense boredom this causes. On top of this, there's the fact that people won't even contemplate your existence. It's like you don't matter, like you don't exist. Then you remember there's nowhere to go. Shelters are only temporary. Your home is the streets. For women, pads or tampons, socks, quarters for laundry and laundry detergent, underwear, travel size toothpaste, deodorant, shaving cream, waterless shampoo or baby powder for hair. If they have a dog, flea collar. Remember, food is just one of many needs. People often forget how critical hygiene items are. Also remember, homeless people are actual people, and so you can usually ask a homeless person what items they need. Best thing anyone ever did for me was just hand me $20 in a supermarket. I know people get weird about giving homeless people money, but if someone is in front of a grocery store, they are probably legit there to buy food. Since many homeless people have dietary restrictions, diabetes is a major one. If you insist on buying food for them, please ask what they want before you get it for them. Well-meaning people have gotten me food that I couldn't eat, or that was perishable, or that needed a microwave to cook while I was homeless. And though the gesture meant a lot, I was unable to use that food. My husband and I were homeless briefly when we got out of detox. Funny thing is, we always had a place to crash an active addiction because we had drug buddies to stay with. When we were using, there was always a way to hustle up money. When we were clean, there was nothing. I always give extra cash because I have been there. Kindness went a long way. McDonald's let us sleep there one night and hired us a week in a motel room until we got paid. Was another great gift. Rides and bikes were amazing donations. We live in a small town with no soup kitchen, so meals were awesome. It also gets really cold in the winter, and something that would have helped is warm winter clothes. If you are interested in this subject, there is an episode of Adam Conover's Yes, from Adam Ruins Everything podcast factually dealing with homelessness. The podcast is more serious than the show. He interviews experts in the field and leads a conversation on the subject at hand. His expert in the homelessness episode is a man who is formerly homeless and who currently works in outreach and activism addressing getting people off the streets. He has a lot of interesting insight and addresses what is helpful, what is hurtful, and what types of help actually get people back on their feet. Other than a place to shower, blankets were our second biggest concern. Even living in our car, it didn't provide much insulation from the cold winter outside. Thankfully, after the first night, the cops left us alone. If I ever find myself in that situation again, I'm headed south. I wouldn't be able to make it through another winter like that. Someone from Reddit sent us 2 0-degree mummy sleeping bags, and someone else sent us a gift card to Walmart that we used to purchase a second comforter. So with the extra blanket and the mummy bags, we were at least a lot warmer after that. I was homeless in middle school and then again in high school. One of my friends would invite me over to stay and I would shower, eat a good meal, and we would play video games. When he went to sleep, I would sneak downstairs and steal a bunch of pre-packaged foods from his cupboards. Years later, I went back home and the subject came up, and I apologized to him for taking food from his family. He told me that he knew I was doing it at the time, and didn't want to embarrass me. Very good friend. Homeless as a kid. Food, and food. Stealing food is easy, but most small gas stations will just tell you to leave, and most chain stores will have someone follow you around as soon as you walk in. As a typical rule of thumb, don't give homeless people money, especially kids. Give us food. My sister and I were given money a few times by some very generous people, so naturally we went and spent it on food as fast as possible, only for our parents to come back and get mad that we spent the money we were given. After that, we had to give the money to our parents so they could get more drugs. But we could eat any food that was given to us. If you're doing a gift drive or something similar and you give gifts for the kids that aren't practical, coats, gloves, shoes, they need to be small, something that could be easily jammed into a backpack or small duffel bag. If it's too big, it'll get left behind. I had a set of jacks and a yo-yo that fit in a pencil bag that I kept with me for years. Also, if you see some homeless kids around an area, often notify OCS or your local PD. Odds are that they have a relative looking for them. A state trooper picked my sister and I up off the street and took us to OCS, and they got in contact with my cousins in the next town over. We were at my cousin's house before dinner. Also, feel free to ask questions. I'll try my best to answer them. Socks. PPL may not believe or laugh at it, but being a homeless once, I can say this. It's really necessary for homeless PPL, especially in cold countries, and most undermine charity thing. When I was younger, I always hung out at the skate park. I lived pretty far from my friends, so after parties, I was like 16. I'd get dropped off at the park and usually hang there from like 4 AM. Then wait till someone came later to skate and hang out till late night and do it all over again. Once it was raining and I was by myself, so I put my jacket over my knees and slept under the covering of one of the kiddie slides on the playground. Mind you, I wasn't homeless or doing drugs, just didn't want to go home or couldn't find a ride. A nice lady gave me a sandwich and water, which I politely declined, then hesitated, and took it and thanked her. I love egg and chorizo sandwiches now. After a couple years of doing this, the tennis shack manager close by the skate park saw me and gave me the gift I was most grateful for: employment. I was 16 and never had a job before. He would give me money to string tennis rackets and a warm place to string them at. I caught on fairly quickly, and they were actual orders for other people. Expensive rackets. I told him when I got a job I'd get him whatever he wanted. He said an instant coffee machine. I moved and didn't talk to him for a few years, and walked in there lugging a Keurig machine. He broke down crying. We still talk almost 10 years later, and now I have the weird skill of knowing how to string a tennis racket without ever really playing. Thank you, Terry. My husband, myself, and our 3 kids just became homeless last week. Our landlord neglected to tell us the bank foreclosed on 6 months ago. We are living in a tent at a campsite and the nicest thing anyone has done for us is let us use their weekend RV during the week. Having a TV and a shower is amazing. Hopefully we can find a place soon. Fingers crossed. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.